All right, let's jump right into this explainer. Today we're unpacking the gripping plot and the massive real-world controversy behind the smash hit 2026 Netflix series Teach You a Lesson. This is a show that didn't just dominate global streaming charts, it actually struck a deeply sensitive nerve in South Korean society, blurring the lines between fictional entertainment and real-world educational reform. So, if you've been hearing all the intense debate surrounding this series, you're definitely in the right place. We're going to break down the entire story, explore its fascinating episodic structure, and unpack the massive real-world impact it left in its wake.
So imagine this. What if the government authorized brutal physical force to discipline high school bullies? That is the shocking, provocative premise that kicks off our entire story. It asks us to imagine a world where the state fights juvenile crime with sanctioned violence. In the universe of Teach You a Lesson, the school system hasn't just failed, it's completely collapsed under the weight of campus violence, malicious parents, and a total decline in faculty authority. The creators are asking us a bold question here. When the law fails to protect the innocent because the perpetrators are underage, what happens when a government agency is given the green light to fight fire with literal fire?
Section 1. A broken education system and the inciting incident. To understand why this happens, we have to look at the tragic event that sets the whole narrative in motion. Back in 2024, a passionate teacher named Choi Ga-yoon was desperately trying to help a troubled student, Gu Chol, turn his life around. But instead of accepting her help, he tragically murders her in cold blood. And because he's a minor, the system's response feels painfully, horribly inadequate. This devastating loss absolutely shatters her father, Choi Gang-sik. So, by 2026, he channels all that grief into a radical, sweeping legislative move to ensure no teacher ever suffers his daughter's fate again.
And that brings us to the government's response. The creation of the ERPB, the Educational Rights Protection Bureau, is a government agency granted complete legal immunity to bypass the law to restore order in broken schools. The Teacher Rights Protection Act officially sanctions this bureau to use whatever means necessary, including physical force and psychological pressure, to dismantle school gangs, root out corrupt administrators, and punish delinquent students who exploit their age to avoid legal consequences. They're basically a state-funded vigilante squad operating completely legally within the school halls.
Section 2. Meet the ERPB squad, the brawn and the brains.
So who exactly is tasked with enforcing this extreme new state policy? Well, the series introduces us to a highly specialized squad, perfectly divided into physical enforcers and tactical geniuses. They're a deeply unorthodox team, relying way more on military tactics and cyber warfare than on, detentions and parent-teacher conferences.
Let's look at how this team's dynamic actually plays out. You have the intimidating brawn of Hwa Jin and Han Rim, balanced out by the tech-savvy brains of Gun Dae. Na Hwa-jin, the lead inspector, is actually the former fiancé of the murdered teacher, giving him a deeply personal vendetta. He's joined by Im Han-rim, a former military sergeant who doesn't shy away from a physical altercation. Then we have Bong Geun, a brilliant hacker from KIST, who serves as the team's tactical oversight. And watching over the whole thing is Choi Gang-sik, the Minister of Education and the ERPB's founder. Together, they form an unstoppable unit.
Section 3. Escalating campus crimes, the villain of the week.
From there, the narrative takes us on an absolute wild ride across various deeply corrupted schools. The sheer variety of societal issues they tackle is insane. At Daeon High, they target a bully whose politician father protects him, eventually leading to the father's arrest and the bully's complete psychological breakdown. At Soyeon Girls' School, Geun-dae uses his hacking skills to publicly expose a malicious influencer who drove a teacher to suicide. Over at Chukmyung, it's academic bribery, leading to the arrest of wealthy parents. At Hyunjin Middle, the team tackles a juvenile narcotics ring by literally tossing the young culprits into a detention center alongside convicted murderers just to terrify them straight. And at Nakwon High, when a massive illegal online gambling ring traps students in debt, the ERPB uses brutal, unyielding physical force to dismantle the loan sharks. It's just a continuous escalation of stakes and violence.
Now, what makes this so compelling is the clear juxtaposition between these arrogant, untouchable villains and the ERB's complete disregard for conventional rules. Throughout the series, the tension stems from these untouchable figures. Whether it's corrupt politicians, protected minors, or manipulative influencers, smugly believing the system just can't touch them. The catharsis of the show, And honestly, what drove its massive viewership is watching the ERPB shatter that illusion using overwhelming, legally sanctioned force, physical beatings, and tactical psychological warfare.
Section 4. The ultimate confrontation. Geun returns.
Eventually, this villain of the week format explodes into a serialized climax, the return of Geun's killer, Geun. The tension here is off the charts. Geun comes back to school, we learn he actually killed Geun to protect a secret drug enterprise, and he manages to orchestrate a massive public scandal. He pushes a student off a roof, frames the ERPB, and forces the government to shut the bureau down. But our heroes don't stop. They go completely rogue to hunt him down. It all leads to a bloody final showdown where Hua-jin confronts Geun and actually gets stabbed, in a gripping parallel to his fiancée's murder. But, using his special forces background, Hua-jin overpowers and subdues him, leading to Geun's arrest and the triumphant reinstatement of the ERPB. It's a hugely dramatic, explosive conclusion.
Section 5. Beyond the screen. Looking at the real-world impact. Because a premise this provocative was never going to just stay on the screen. The show was an absolute juggernaut. It racked up over 490 million hours viewed globally on Netflix. That makes it the 5th most watched Korean original series of all time. It even held the #1 spot on Netflix's global top 10 non-English TV shows list for 4 consecutive weeks. Audiences around the world were clearly captivated by the high-stakes action, and, frankly, the wish fulfillment of seeing a broken system forcefully corrected. However, we have to impartially acknowledge the fierce domestic debate it sparked. On one side, you had boycotts and critics. The Korean Teachers and Education Workers Union issued strong statements arguing that having a government official beat students glorifies banned, illegal corporal punishment and completely normalizes aggression instead of democratic conflict resolution. But on the flip side, supporters defended it. The Korean Federation of Teachers Associations praised the show for shining a massive spotlight on the genuine crisis of classroom discipline and the real decline of educators' authority. Netflix itself even had to publicly address the controversy, stating they handled the sensitive adaptation with a strong sense of responsibility.
I want to leave you with this provocative, real-life quote from Ahn Min-sok, the Gyeonggi Province Superintendent-elect. He said, "Education is impossible unless teachers' authority is restored." He actually proposed creating a real ERPB after watching the series, and noted he even received messages from former Special Forces members volunteering to serve if it were ever created. It really blurs the line between fictional thriller and reality. So what do you think? Is extreme discipline ever the answer to a broken system? Think on that. And thanks for joining me on this explainer.